place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Janneke, and today I'm here with Jolene Setterfield, who is a third-generation psychic medium. She's a blogger for Huffington Post and Soul and Spirit magazine, and she's the creator of the card deck, the Reminder Cards, and also the author of the book, A Reminder. And she's passionate about teaching people worldwide how to enhance their intuition. Hello, Jolene. Welcome. How are you?
Hi. I'm really good, thank you. Doing awesome. How are you?
I'm very good. I've been looking into interviews with you lately, and I think you have a lot of wisdom to bring forward. And you've been speaking a lot about how to align and access our higher self, and I would like to speak about that today, and also how to manifest beautiful things in our life, not like on a superficial level to get all these things, but because we deserve it, and like the balance between, you know, surrendering and attracting it in a more like aligned way. But first, let me ask you, have you always been a psychic? Was this something you were born with, or is it something you have developed?
Well, my beliefs are that we all have the psychic abilities within us. And when I was little, both my parents were actively practicing the psychic stuff, and my grandparents too, mainly my grandma. It did scare her a bit, so she was more in the closet around it. But I was brought up I was born in the 80s, and it was a little bit not as accepted as what it is now. But it was something that I felt from growing up around that. It was quite normal to be surrounded by crystals and angels. But then it was almost like you'd go out into the other world, like the normal world, and people weren't really talking about that. So my belief is that we've all got access to these psychic abilities. So it's not just like, I don't believe that just some people are gifted as such like that. So I'm always just like clear on that to say, you know, we all have these gifts within us. I think what it is like a muscle. And if you're working that muscle, it's the same as working out at the gym, which I actually really do need to do and get used to that. But you know, when you go to the gym and you get fit and you just feel so much better, you look better, it has all these benefits. It's a bit like that as how I see the psychic skills, the intuition, it's all on the same kind of level. So that's the difference. It's just I was more aware of it at a younger age from being really little. Yeah, it was part of our upbringing, really.
So you're saying that when we align, incredible things happen. Can you explain what you mean by aligning?
Well, I think, you know, there's all kinds of stuff that's thrown out there at the minute, and it can be really confusing and it can be a bit overwhelming. And sometimes I think we have this pressure on ourselves to kind of fit in with the way society is at present, which is a very fast-paced society for a lot of us. And there's almost like we live in a bit of an instant gratification time, you know, where we want things now. And so sometimes we can get caught up in all that energy of, oh my gosh, I need this now. And it's sometimes it can be a wrong place to come from when if you're doing it from a place of, well, I need this because it will then prove that I'm worthy of something, you know, like say if you wanted a new car, but just to kind of say, well, look at my new car or look at my new house. And I'm not knocking that, because I actively think, you know, luxury, beautiful things, we should welcome that. And I don't think we should just push that aside. But it's when it starts becoming about those things and not necessarily looking at the emotions behind it. Because quite often what we can do is we can get stuck and lost in the trying to fill a void inside of us, which are maybe perhaps past things that have happened that we can block down. Now, whether that's shopping, whether it's an addiction to sex, or whether it's whatever, or alcoholism, whatever, we can sometimes become addicted to those things to try and fill that gap. So when I talk about alignment, it's like looking at our stuff. Like the way I see it is we're polarity. So wherever there's lightness, there's darkness. And it's about embracing all sides of us and not just closing one side off. So if we're having these impulses to go out and do things, such as, you know, maybe drinking or sleeping with people, or whatever that is, I mean, I'm just playing around with this, but there's something inside of us that might be driving us that we're not looking at. So it's just kind of having a real deep inner chat with ourselves and saying, okay, without getting stuck in it either, because I'm not a big fan of dwelling in stuff. I don't feel we need to necessarily do that. I think it's just an awareness of shining a light on it. So the alignment is, for me personally, I can only share from like my journey, my experience and what I've gone through, because it's different for everybody. I think there's no one truth. Everybody has their own truth. And the one thing that's helped me is about just accepting the different parts of me and then looking at that, like what's driving that? before I was married and looking around and dating several people and going, okay, what's driving that? Why do I feel I need somebody to complete me? And so it's looking deeper at that aspect.
That's interesting. I would just want to mention that because I've been wondering about the same. But I feel like that's something in us human beings. Maybe it's our nature that we need to have somebody. We need to mate. I think it's really difficult to not long for that because it seems so innate, you know?
Well, that's it. And I agree. I think it is part of us, but it's also being mindful to not. There's a few things with this. So what I've noticed in my own life and in other people as well is sometimes, especially with the strong women, I just want to point this out because I've seen this a lot. Now, we can sometimes think that we need to be in a relationship to have that part of us that's fulfilled by someone else or making our lives worthy because then we've got this person. And more often than not, the stronger women will be pushing that person forward. So I don't know if you've come across that, where there's the old saying about behind every successful man there's a woman. And the reason I bring this up is because it's something I did, and I noticed this a lot because times are changing, and especially women are being called up to step out and step in their power. And when it comes to relationships, I've seen this a few times, quite often actually, where you get a beautiful, powerful woman. And when I say beautiful, I mean on the inside as well. I don't just mean the outside, and I mean all of it, because it's how we define beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it's looking at that and embracing all aspects of ourselves. But it's also looking at that part of us. Is that, just to put this out there, because no one can complete us. And if we're looking for that in someone else, then we have this whole expectation of how we expect that person to be in that relationship, which is kind of setting itself up for failing, because we then expect that person to be a certain way. And if they're not, then what happens to us when we're relying on someone else to fulfill that we're looking for? And what often happens is, if we go into looking for a relationship like that, we usually bring in somebody who's also looking to be complete. When really that's down to us to fill ourselves up so that when we come together, just my perception of it, to have that healthy experience together and grow together is where you put the relationship between yourself and whether you want to call it the universe, God, source, whatever that is, that relationship comes first, that one. Then the romantic relationship comes first. And I've done both. You know, I've really been lost in this whole world. And that's why I've got a lot of knowledge on it, because of my own experience and where I'd gone through some hellish relationships, but I could see what I was doing because I really felt like someone would complete me. I just want to come back to a point, what I was saying about the strong woman and putting that energy into the man. I've seen this so many times. And what's happening is that a lot of us are waking up and we're being called to share our messages in the world and to put ourselves out there. And sometimes we can be like, yes, I'm going to do it. And other times we can be like, oh my God, who am I to do this? And so we can hide behind the men in a relationship and push them forward. And then they're doing great things. And inside of us, we're like, well, what about me? And so it's looking at that and saying, what's the real reasons you're looking for this other person? Now, yes, naturally, we will like the bonding and it's beautiful to have that, of course. But it's also making sure, why are we what's the reason for doing it? Are we doing this because we want to have fun and enhance what we've already got? Because when you're in that place, and I've been in numerous relationships where I was looking for someone to complete me, and it always ended like in a bit of a nightmarish situation. It's like, oh my God, same scenario, different person. And what I realized is when I really stepped back and looked at this and I thought, okay, this is the problem with me. This isn't the guys. This is me. It's the same situation. And I thought, I'm willing to go there. That's the thing with me. I'm willing to look at my own stuff, no matter what that is.
How are you able to actually change that? Because that's, the big challenge.
It's awareness. It's an awareness, right? So if you're looking at something and thinking, if you notice a pattern where you're in a relationship with completely different people or you're dating different people, but there's patterns coming up, that's when I say look at that, because you've got different people there, but similar patterns. That's something for you to take note of. And that's what I kept noticing is I got a bit bored very quickly. And I felt like I was looking for something or there wasn't quite perfect. And that was my own idea of perfectionism and what I was expecting in a relationship, but I wasn't being that. So who am I to expect someone to show up and be this, this kind of dream scenario when I wasn't doing the work? And that's the part of it is if we're saying, like, say, for example, you're creating a wish list of wanting to bring somebody in. So you're writing a list of, well, I want this guy to be handsome. He knows himself. He knows what he wants. He's strong. is passionate, is, sensitive. But what are we being? Because we're magnets, right? So we can have that list of everything we desire. But if we're not working on ourselves and showing up and being a match to that, that's not going to happen. And we can blame people all we want and say, well, they're not this and they're not that. But and this is where I want to bring up just again, whether this is, I just feel guided to share it. What we can do as women sometimes, and especially if we've got a message to share with the world, looking for these guys and looking for that perfection, or getting lost in that and not actually doing what we're here to do, can be one of the biggest self-sabotages that we don't even realize we're doing. Because we can end up being on like a circle of looking for this person. And it's like, I feel it's a way of setting ourselves up almost for like a failure, because it's done in a way of, if I'm getting in a real drama with this guy and this guy keeps showing up and I don't know where I'm going, and and we put, a lot of the times we put our heart and souls into these people that we're dating. We think, this is the one, we get excited. And when we do that, if we're not careful and not looking at the patterns of what's showing up, and I'm not saying that we're perfect or anyone's perfect, it's part of life. We're always here, we're always progressing, but it's working on that. And from my own journey, I started seeing it was the same patterns that were coming up, because I was writing my wish list, I was making notes to the universe. I was like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And it's very specific, and quite often we can get a lot of what we're asking for. And if we're not specific in what we're asking for as well, it's almost like the universe has a bit of a laugh with us as well, because it can send in some really crazy stuff and we're like, oh, I didn't ask for that, and it's like, I wasn't clear on that. And then also it can be a complete sabotage to throw us off track, because especially if you really feel with, and women tend to feel really deeply as well, and especially when it comes to the relationships, and because in our society we're thrown out there of what a relationship is and this perfect relationship, and we get taught that from being little. It's like we dream of having this amazing kind of princess wedding and everything's gorgeous, and then when we start living life and realizing, actually, is it really like that? And then we can start thinking, oh my gosh, like we put all this pressure on ourselves from a very young age of what society expects us to be or expects us to live. And yes, I feel it's normal to long for that partner, because life's more fun when you've got a partner there. But that's the one thing I think often trips people up, is looking for what we're wanting to maybe be in ourselves, but we're expecting that in someone else. And it's our responsibility to be that.
So back to what I started speaking about a little bit about surrendering and how we can actually manifest. So would you suggest that you actually just stop looking and actually just say, or have an intention like, yeah, dear universe, I really want a mate, a partner, but then focus on your work and just trust that it will come? Just really letting it go.
Yeah, no, it depends as well, because everybody's different. So there's not like a one answer for one, because everybody's on a different place in their life. What I found is when we become really not obsessed, because that's too strong a word, but when it becomes a dominant energy in our life, where we're looking for someone, where it's like, I need to be with someone, or we may be thinking, oh, I'm getting older, I want to meet someone, I might be past my sell-by date, or all these silly excuses we come up with. It's like when it starts becoming where it's taking over our lives a little bit. And everybody knows this within themselves of how much energy throughout the day that's taking up. And if that's taking up, say, 70% or more, just as a rough guide, then that is definitely something to look at and say, okay, what is it that I might be trying to avoid? Because quite often when we're doing that and putting all our energy into searching for someone else, sometimes, and this isn't with everybody, sometimes that might be because we're searching for something within ourselves that we're looking for. And often, and this is happening a lot, because a lot of people are waking up to the consciousness vibe and they're realizing they're not in the right job, or they have to share a message with the world, but they don't know how to do it. So if they're looking for a partner and creating drama in their life, then it keeps them away from what this calling is inside of them that keeps coming up. So if we have drama, it takes our mind off it. Does that make sense? Whereas if you haven't got the drama and you sit with that and say, okay, what's the message here? Because quite often we don't tend to listen to our own voices, our own intuition, if you will. We can be so distracted that it stops us from being who we naturally are. Because naturally, we don't need anything from anyone else. We don't, like really. We have all that. We have access to that. But often as humans. We quite like the drama because we do, you know, it's like part of society.
Yeah,
It's
I
like we
gotta
feel
say,
alive
there's
and stuff.
something about the drama that is almost like a drug.
Yes,
I
it's
would
like an
say, yeah,
addiction to it.
yeah,
It's almost like an addiction to, because if we have some drama, it can create those like feelings of, oh, I
yeah,
feel alive,
yeah,
but
right.
not in a healthy way. Do you know what I mean? But that's okay. It's not about wronging anything. And that's another thing. There's no right or wrong with this. It's just being mindful, being aware. Like, I don't believe in just that we're all always looking around going, I'm just pure love all the time, because we're in a human world. We have all of those aspects, all of those facets to us. And it's about allowing that to come up and asking ourselves, well, what is this? If we're looking for a partner and it's something so strong in ourselves, and I went through this before I met my husband. So that my experience was I was really looking for somebody when really what I was doing was I was sabotaging in a way I didn't realize, because it created so much drama from dating, and it was fun, but almost very distracting, because I'd be going out, I'd be going to events, and then I'd be drinking, and then I'd feel horrible the next day, and then I won't be able to work on the project I wanted to work on, and then I felt all emotional. Was I hearing from this guy? Was I not hearing from this guy? It was all sabotage on some level.
So you actually felt a difference when you kind of looked into it or looked at your pattern and changed?
Yes, massively.
He came?
But oh my God, like people kept saying, you'll find him when you're not looking. And I didn't believe that at all. I didn't. I was like, oh, it's just rubbish. It's just, you know, whatever. I can be really skeptical, actually. I can be really, really. So for doing this work, it's kind of like, I can be so skeptical that I question everything. And I didn't realize I was looking for a person to complete me, but I was. And it wasn't until, and I could see it in other people, but not myself. And people are mirrors of us, right? So we can often see that. And I didn't want to see it. That was the thing. I just didn't want to see it. But what I realized is, if I had drama, then that meant in some way in my life, that was an excuse, and that justified me not sharing what I was here to share with the world. And that took up quite a lot of time.
Wow.
So I did really well at that. I did awesome at that, you know, in a sense of sabotaging. So it's looking at that and saying, okay, and I realized because of the amount of time that I felt was taken up in the energy of looking for this person. And then I wrote my list, and then I looked at it. And somebody had said to me, it was one of my friends had said, she'd mentioned she'd seen an exercise. I think it was through Tony Robbins. I'm not entirely sure. And she said, on the list, have you wrote a list of what you need to do to become that? Because we're magnets. Like if we're wanting to attract that, we better be that to bring that in. Otherwise, it's not a match. And that really struck a chord with me. And I thought, do you know what? No, I wasn't. I was so engrossed in what I wanted from this person. And I don't know who I thought I was really. I was like, I want this, I want that, and this is what I expect. Blah, blah, blah. You know, and I'm looking at it going, actually, you know what? This is something what I need to work on. And as soon as I saw that felt so empowering for me. Just the awareness. And often in these kind of in the spiritual world, and I say that loosely, but in a world where we're more aware, more conscious of what we're doing, and that's not like saying anyone else is less than or anything like that, but just being more aware of our actions, that sometimes we feel like we have to do all these processes or work on this for years and years.
Yeah.
And we don't. You know, I don't feel we do. I mean, everybody's different, but with this in particular, I think it can be that simple of looking at what are the patterns, what are the guys that keep showing up, and what is it that's causing pain within us in the relationship? What is that? So getting clear on it so we can see that something's being triggered. And then it's looking at on our list of what we want in the guys, because we know what we want from what we don't want. So that's the first thing. I did a list of what I wanted. Then I did a list of who do I need to become to attract that person in. That changed everything for me. And I realized I had so much work to do on myself. I didn't have time to be looking for anyone because I needed to work on myself. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't expect that's why they weren't showing up, because I wasn't that. We were close and there were some aspects. But when I took some time to step back, and I really committed to this as well, because I think when you commit to something energetically, it shows the universe or God or source, whatever you want to call it, that you mean business. It means you're committed. You are in. You're all in. And things change. And that's where I feel the miracles happen. But sometimes we overcomplicate things as humans because we overthink stuff. Whereas if we just commit and say, okay, I'm ready to change, even that statement can start changing everything. And when you say I'm ready to change, I'm ready and I'm willing, to look at any of my stuff and I'm ready to change. That in itself can open miracles beyond anything you can ever comprehend. And it really can be that simple. But when I saw that list of what I needed to do, I didn't have time to be looking for the guys.
So how long did it take? I'm curious.
This was all quite public on Facebook. So I decided to declare it because I'm quite open and transparent and I'll share things. And this was on my personal profile. So it wasn't on my main page. And because I've shared a lot, you know, I don't mind sharing my stories. I love it anyway. And I feel like I'm a guinea pig. Like I'll put myself through stuff before I'd ever get my clients to try it or anyone like that. I do it myself. And I was like, okay, the relationship aspect was something I didn't feel at the time I had any sort of expertise in at all. And I was very open about that. I was like, I've got this really wrong. This isn't happening. You know, I'd been divorced at 27, was getting divorced, and most of my friends were getting married. And I was like very anti-marriage at that point. I was like, I don't want to be with anyone, and probably not the best company to be around with someone who's really excited and they're getting married. I vowed I won't get married again. I've got a little boy who's now 11. And, you know, it was a real eye-opener to go through all these experiences. But I also realized it made me a lot more knowledgeable about stuff, because now I think of all the experiences I went through, and some hilarious experiences, some horrible, some painful experiences. But it brought me to this place where I realized that I was so fascinated by relationships that I lost myself in them. Like I felt like I had to be someone else sometimes, or I wasn't good enough. So it's looking at that aspect of us as well. And sometimes we project that out on our ideal partner, that we expect them to be X, Y, and Z. But if we're not being that, then it's unfair to expect them to be that as well. So when I started doing this work, I publicly announced it on Facebook. And I think that was in possibly about May 2015. And my husband now, and bearing in mind I said I'd never get married, so he's an incredibly special person, because I meant that as well when I said I'll never get married again. And then I met him, and we had a lot of mutual friends. And he reached out to me on Facebook, and I thought he was in America when I first saw the message, because we was in a small community from one of our mutual friends in America, and I've not spoken to him. And that was around the same time. And he reached out and asked me if I'd be on his podcast. And I'm really particular about what shows I go on and stuff like that. And more often than not, I say no to quite a lot of things for different reasons. But anyway, and I thought, actually, I like this guy. There's something about him. But I didn't like him in an attractive way where I thought, ooh, I wasn't thinking that. I was like, I like what he's doing. I like his message. This feels good. I'm going to go on this. And so that's how it started. And then we started messaging each other. And it was after I'd said publicly that I don't want to date anybody at all for like, I don't know what I said, I think 6 months or something. I called it a man diet. I was like, I'm not going to date anybody. So of course, me and Steve got chatting. I met him. He came up to see me in the August. That was it. It was like game over.
Wow.
Because we've been chatting. And then when we looked, there was so much synchronicity where we went to an event together in London in 2012. And I was one of there was 12 of us at the front, but there was 2,000 people there. And so 12 of us had to wear white, and it was about, I can't fully remember what it was, but it was activating one of the light portals or something or other. And I ended up being in one of his photographs in the background, but I didn't know him. This was 2012. So just like strange things like that, where you look back and go, that was like bizarre. But I also realized if I'd have met Steve even 2 years ago beforehand, I was not in a place to be in that relationship at all.
That's so interesting.
Is divine timing.
Yes, divine timing. Do you think that there's something meant to be here in the sense that he's in your path, but you could have missed him also?
No, I see. Now, this has always been an interesting subject, because part of me thinks, are we manifesting that because we're actively co-creating it, or is it destiny? And that's a question I don't know the answer to. I don't know, and I think it's something perhaps maybe when we pass to the next realm that we'll find that out, because there's so many synchronicities there. Who could possibly know that? So if I was to say to you, well, it's definitely this, I don't know that. That's something that I'm on a search for. Is it destiny, or are we manifesting and creating that ourselves? My thoughts initially are that must have had some divine synchronicity in there, because when we look back, and I look back at my experiences, the best way I can explain, just from my experience, and I can't say it's right or wrong because I don't know, but what I feel has come to be a truth for me is that we have life experiences. So you could like call them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, 7, 8, all the way through your life, So say one of your experiences, maybe as a baby, and it's something you had to, whether it was a health thing or whatever, I don't know, but it was something that was maybe on a soul contract, pre-planned as our soul to grow here. But getting from situation 1 to 2, I feel we have free will. So like using the law of attraction, we either crawl there or we fly there. It's up to us on where we're hanging out on the emotional scale. So this is what I've come to understand after speaking to lots and lots of people. And I mean, I'm always questioning everything. And so this is what seems to make more sense. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. Right. But it seems to, when I look back at things in my life and also looking at other people's situations, it feels like that possibly might have some truth in it. So going from these situations, which I feel the pre-planned on a soul level, no matter how horrible they are or how wonderful they are, it's part of our soul lessons, which we've come here to experience. But the rest of it, I think we have free will.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's kind of both in a mystical way.
Yeah, and that so it's kind of it's not one or the other, I don't think, but whether that's true or not, I don't know. Right. But that's just my understanding. That's how I kind of put it across in a way that people might understand it. Yeah. Because there's times when, I've had some horrendous experiences and some amazing experiences which has defined and shaped me in my life, which if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Does that make sense?
Yes, but have the same thing.
There's times when to get beyond, like between those situations where I've really played with the law of attraction and I have disciplined, and that's the word I'd use when it comes to the law of attraction and creating those positive things. It's disciplined myself, like really, and it felt abnormal to do that, to stay absolutely focused and positive every single day for a full month. And I did that and I had some incredible results. And I think in our society, we're so used to feeling more like negative stuff because we get it thrown at us all the time. So that's why I use the word discipline. And I don't like that word, but I use it because I feel like that's part of our job, is to really start using that now to discipline ourselves to feel good, which is crazy. Like, why do we have to discipline ourselves to feel good? But it does seem to take that sometimes, so we're not getting caught up in the drama. And that's, I think, because there's so much energy coming at us from all over at the minute. That's something I'm working on all the time. I don't have that to a T at all. I have meltdowns regularly. And that's something I think as teachers, we have maybe had this idea where we've been on a platform or something where people look up to the teachers and they have this projection of that teacher's always happy all the time. And that I don't feel is true. So it's about being real about it, but it's also about actively disciplining ourselves as much as we can.
You mean discipline ourselves to align in a way?
To feel good. To feel good. To not get caught up in the dramas.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's speak a little bit about attracting abundance. And also I know that you are a spiritual business coach. You're working, with people with spiritual businesses. So is it about the frequency? Is it about getting into a frequency more than just focusing on, I want a lot of tennis balls, just think about tennis balls? Because I know somebody had that example, and I've learned that it's more about the feeling than the thought.
Yeah, and everybody's so different. So some people feel more, some people see more, if that makes sense. So some people can visualize and be so strong in their feelings around that. And that sounds a bit strange saying that, but it depends where it is on the person, because everybody's different. That's my experience. So there's not one set rule, because certainly people I've worked with, some things work better for some people, some things work better for others. So for example, one thing I love doing is morning pages, which was given by, there's a lady called Julia Cameron.
Yes,
and she has the book The Artist's Way. Yeah, she's fantastic. And I went to one of her workshops in London, but I'd been reading her books before, and that's the one practice that I do every single day, because for me that's like a brain dump. And writing for me is a way of me clearing stuff out. It's a way of expressing that. But that works for me. But for example, Steve, my husband, he likes to talk things out. So he'll talk and talk and talk and talk, and that's his way of clearing it. And then he's like, oh. So everybody's different in that sense of how to align or how to manifest things. There isn't one straight rule. And if there was, we would all be living that life like beyond our wildest dreams right now, if it was that easy. So part of it is discovering ourselves. And what is it? What is it that really resonates with us? So the feelings, yes, the feelings.
I just want to thank you for that, because I haven't heard that before. I've heard that, this way, it's that way, but not listening to yourself, getting to know yourself first before you actually manifest. That's a huge point, because it's difficult. A lot of people it doesn't work. The secret doesn't work. And then somebody says, no, it's about the feeling. Okay, but that doesn't work. I don't get it to work. But, you just had a really good point there.
Well, this is part of it, because I think as well, it depends on what people's experiences are, because there are so many truths. So I believe everybody's got their own truth. So that's why I don't say this is the truth and this is the way it's got to be. I don't believe that. I believe we live in a vast universe that everybody has free will and they have their own truths. So some things are going to resonate with people. Absolutely. You're going to get people who are like, the secret's changed my life. You're going to get people like, this is rubbish. This hasn't done anything for me. But it's going deeper than that. It's looking at going, well, what works for that person? Because it depends how much you're willing as a person, as an individual, how much you're willing to go there in yourself, because everybody's got different beliefs. Ultimately, a lot of it, I feel, it goes around the belief system. So you can have two complete polarities of somebody who's watched The Secret, it's entirely changed their lives. They've got all of the support and evidence to show that. You've got somebody else on the opposite side of the scale, which hasn't made an impact in their lives. They've got all the evidence to show that they've done the techniques. And so people are having wonderful, unique experiences all simultaneously at the same time. And that's part of, I think, one of the massive, huge gifts we have of living in this time right now, is that we all have that free will, and we all have a place within us where we can have the experience of what we're choosing. And it really does depend on how much you want to know that, how much you want to get to know that side of what is it you're looking for ultimately. What's the question? Because sometimes, no, I don't mean for you now asking me that, I just mean in life, because sometimes we can get so caught up in, if we're looking for something, like I said, to fill that void inside of us, we can get lost in that. And if we don't want to go there and look at whatever we've been trying to hide, and look, I've been through that loads of times. Like, there was experiences in my childhood and I couldn't go there. It was too painful to go there. And it was only later on when I felt ready. And that's why it's important not to rush ourselves either, but be mindful that it's not a sabotage. There's a fine line. It's balance, as with anything. Because if there's something inside of us that we know we need to sort out, but if we keep putting something off, and either is it because we're not ready to deal with that, or is it because it's a sabotage to stop us from really being happy, or we feel embarrassed or ashamed if we go there and remove it. So there's so many layers with people. It really does depend on everybody's experience, on where they're at. But ultimately, I've found that if you have more general question around it, so if it's something like you to ask yourselves, as opposed to manifesting, because the word manifesting can trigger quite a few people. Does that make sense? Because it's got all sorts of meanings around it now. Because it's been out for like 11 years as The Secret. And you know what? There's so many teachings on the law of attraction way before The Secret came out. Now, that was amazing what they did. But like Jerry and Esther Hicks with the Abraham teachings, they've been around for years and years and years. Going right beyond that, there was Florence Scovel Shinn from the 1920s who taught around this as well. Now, what often was referred to was some of the more Christian texts, what she put in there, but she changed the word Lord to law. And when I read that, that literally made so much sense to me. And I was given that book at 15 years old. So I was already aware of how things could work, but I didn't quite get it.
Could. Because I'm curious, what do you think? Is the universe based on law of attraction, or can it be?
I think, this isn't the truth. This is just my experience and what my perception, which may change. I am open to everything changing. That's part of life as well, is be open to changes. Because if we're rigid, it stops things. And I am open to everything. But just to express where I'm at my life right now, my perception on that is that I think there are universal laws that do govern the universe. And I think there's many. Now, one that I've come to understand is the law of attraction, because I've experienced both sides of it. As in, we've all experienced it on some level. But I actively wanted to experiment with it. Now, when you become aware of knowledge like that, it's hard to just push that away, because that's in us and we're aware of it, which can be really irritating and annoying at times. Because if we know that we're not showing up, or we keep going over a story that's worn out and it's not serving us, but we like the drama, and that's our story, so that's what we've come to use as an excuse, really, to not do what we're here to do. So we keep going over the story because it justifies it to us. When we do that, whether we mean it or not, if it's got that energy in there and we keep speaking it, because the words are very powerful. The words, whatever we speak, are powerful. And I've witnessed that, and I see it a lot, but that's just my experience of it. So we've got to be mindful as well, as much as possible, without being like, I daren't talk unless I'm saying something positive. That's ridiculous. We live in a world where we're discovering it's a playground. And I think sometimes we forget that. So it's about not taking it too seriously. But with the power of the word, and when I was really looking at this, and I realized just how much rubbish I spoke, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is ridiculous. I need to change this. I'm not helping myself, and I thought, I'm going to actively do that. So I started really playing with the positive affirmations. And again, it was quite new to me, was that, because I wasn't like, consistently doing it.
Socially also, that you were speaking, more positive.
Oh yeah, I was probably really obnoxious at that time, because I was like, oh, if you're not speaking positive, I'm going. And I look back and I cringe. I'm like, oh my God. And I went to her, I'm so sorry. It was a play, and it was something in myself where I think it's balance, right? Because that can be a little bit obnoxious to do that, to think that we're better than someone or more spiritual than someone. And it's just bullshit. I don't know why people get caught up in that. And I've seen it so many times, which is why I always say, just be real. And maybe some people aren't sure what that means or what being authentic is around, because the word authentic is thrown around a lot as well. So I think it's just about, for me personally, it's been the balance of that. So yes, I do believe that there are laws that govern the universe. Yes, because I guarantee when I've spoken about, but it's beliefs as well. So I think when we have a belief that we have so much emotions around and we believe something so passionately, and then we can start to keep, either the energy going, or we then, for example, we can change that though. We can change a belief. We can, but don't put pressure on yourself to expect it overnight. Because if it's a story that we've been playing, like with the relationships, for example, that was a very deep belief in me that I needed to take some time out to work on. And the funny thing was, as soon as I stepped away from that, again, it's like law of attraction. No, I don't want a relationship. No, I don't want a relationship. That's when people start showing up.
Yeah, but that's like the opposite, because I was curious about that. A lot of people speak about, being in a gratitude frequency to attract something. And also there are some courses about how to attract the man in your life. And then you are like focused and you are setting a date, and you are writing the list, but also about like how you want him to make you feel, and yes, how you want to show up yourself. But they also have the focus on it. Well, you did not. You said the opposite.
I did the absolute opposite.
And that worked too.
That worked for me. That's what I'm saying. So there's no one set rule. Right. And I'm quite rebellious in nature as well. So if somebody tells me to go do something, I'm quite likely to not do it. Or if somebody says don't do that, I've got it in me to go do it. It's like, that's part of who I am. And I've come to know that about myself. So ultimately, I think it's getting to know who we are individually, and then experiment, play. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious. I think sometimes we get so lost in this, like the processes, or we get lost in being a certain way. And I just think play with it, have balance with it. And it's a work in progress. That's how I see it. Like, I'm not perfect by any way. I feel like, honestly, if we're perfect, we'll be dead, because there'd be no point in being here. And that might seem a bit bizarre, a bit backwards to some people. We're kind of perfectly imperfect. Does that make sense? Like, our imperfections are perfect as they are. But I think sometimes we have this idea where we have to be enlightened, and maybe perhaps we're searching for, and if it's outside of ourselves, we're looking in the wrong place. Absolutely. Anytime we're looking at something outside of ourselves, we are looking in the wrong place. Always, this is just my belief. Again, this isn't the truth, but from my experience of it, it's been looking inside of me. Where is it that I have been resisting connecting to something, to my own, whether it's your higher self, whether it's whatever your faith or belief is, because everybody's so different. It might be the universe, it might be God, it might be source, it might be whatever the religion is. To me, it's all that beautiful love power. It's all that same energy, but it's whatever we want to call it. But that relationship, quite often, I have found that we tend to resist it. Now, I've been working on A Course in Miracles. I started doing it at the beginning of this year. I've still had resistance to it. Don't get me wrong. I've had massive resistance to it, like hugely. It's kind of turned my world upside down a bit. I have read A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, but A Course in Miracles had been on my shelf for years. And I was like, one day I'm going to read it. And I also believe that's divine timing as well. So again, it could be, you think, is it sabotage or is it divine timing? But often I think it's divine timing, because maybe we're at a point where we think, I'm ready to read this now, or somebody mentions it and it triggers us and we think, actually, I've got that, I'm going to read it. And A Course in Miracles gives a great example on this. And it says that we can sometimes be scared of God. It specifically says God in there. It's quite a Christian theme in it. But I'm open to all kinds of faiths. Anyway, I don't stick to just one truth, because, again, I think it's all of that expression. If it's love, it's beautiful, and it's part of that higher power, whatever that is. And in A Course in Miracles, it made a lot of sense to me as to why people shy away from that and connecting with God, source, whatever you want to call it. And that's because of our experiences as being a child of whatever that was for us. So if it was forced on you with religion, and another thing is, if we're taught that, in our society here, in this human experience, is that death is, it's hard as a human, it's horrible experience. So if we're being told from a religious angle that there's no death, that we're eternal life, and that there's just love, but yet we're living in this earth place where that doesn't appear to be happening, then of course we're going to start questioning stuff, going, well, how can that be true while we're experiencing pain? We're feeling that when we're loose and when we love, we're feeling that pain so deeply. So then it starts you to ask, actually, maybe we've lost our way as humans across all these thousands of years. That's my thoughts. I mean, I've got a real interest in ancient history as well, and especially with the enlightened societies such as Atlantis and Lemuria. And I feel like there's going to be another enlightened society. It's already happening, and it's about the times and it being prepared. I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. But it's about being aware of what if there is other dimensions where we don't have to feel this pain, or we don't have to feel this confusion. So if you look at it where we're brought up, where we're told there is just love, and there's just pure eternal life, but we're literally seeing in front of us people being killed or people dying, then of course that's going to create some confusion. Like, does that make sense? It's like, how can there not be? So that was my interpretation of it, and that struck such a chord in me that I thought, that's why I feel on my journey that I had pushed God or source or whatever away, because it felt not very nice to me. It felt like a lie, because it's saying, yes, it's eternal life, and yes, there's only pure love, but that wasn't what I was seeing.
Yeah, so it's just words. I remember for me, I felt it was just words in the church. Like, it made no sense, love and everything. I couldn't really grasp it. Because, I mean, I felt love for my family and everything, but that was something different than I felt that the priest was talking about. He talked about some concept that I didn't understand as a child, I felt like.
And as a kid, we absorb that. So that starts to become our paradigm then. And so quite often the thought of God, and I hated the word God. I really did. I was like, ooh, I don't like that, because it felt judgmental. It was like, well, how come some people are having eternal life, but the majority of us here aren't then? And it was this whole place where I realized, and looking deeply now, is, but what if we've been taught wrong? Or what if we've lost our truth along the way? So I recently started to get more into the ancient history around the pagan type stuff, the connection with nature, also simultaneously with looking at some of the older Christian stuff which came in. And I don't class myself as any religion at all. I mean, love is a religion, and I really mean that sincerely. That's what I believe. And when I'm looking at this and I'm researching it into how it used to be, especially here in England, thousands of years ago, because there's places I go to where I felt energy there where I've never felt ever anywhere in the world. Like, there's certain spots, and I know that energy's still there. And that's why I go there. I do retreats there. I take people there because I feel it, and it's changed my life. And it's been, and I wasn't looking for it. It just happened. It's like I discovered all these different things, and then the more I researched on it, the more it was like validated. Now, is that law of attraction? Because I'm looking for that, and who knows? But it's certainly helped me on my life, and I love it. And that's definitely pulled me into a whole new direction when I'm talking about the resurrection of the feminine. But that must be balanced with the masculine as well. That is essential, because otherwise we can get too lost in the feminine power, like, right, women are leading and all this. And yes, absolutely, but don't lose the men, because the men are there to support us beautifully.
Of course.
And there are so many wonderful men who can be in a beautiful partnership, but it's around the dance. That's how I see it. It's like a dance.
It's all about the balance, I feel.
Yeah, it's balance. And we have in the male and female, in all of us, we have a balance of the masculine and feminine energy. And so it's about balancing that out. And again, when it comes to relationships, it's having the balance as well in ourselves, whether you're with a guy, or whether it's a female and a female, or a male and a male. Again, it doesn't matter. It's irrespective. Because that's about being open to that as well, and not just shutting it off to saying, well, it's got to be just this one way where it's male and female in a relationship. And it's like, no, you know what? Everybody has their own unique expression in the world as well. So it's just bringing that up, which I know has been brought to the surface a lot recently.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, everybody, whether you're in a relationship, with whoever, you've got the masculine and feminine. It's about balancing. That's my beliefs anyway. It's about balancing that out. So it's like a song, like universe. The word universe in itself, if you translate it, means one song, which is harmony. Uni, which is one, and then verse means song. So it's one song.
Oh, nice. I like that. I didn't know.
So, it's like the flow, you see. Yeah. So everything, and the more I look at nature and you look at how it flows, and I'm quite interested in sacred geometry, and you look at that and it's like a harmony of the universe, and where can we bring ourselves into that harmony within ourselves? Yeah. So that's just my thoughts on it.
So this is so lovely. I love it, and I'm really resonating with it. And I think we can look into nature to understand more about ourselves also. But in the end of the interview, I'd like to hear a little bit about your psychic ability, because I think we all have it, and I'm very curious about how it works for you. So how does it work for you? Is it something you turn on and off, or do you immediately know things about another person on the street, for instance, or like me sitting here, can you see stuff, or how does it work for you?
Right. So my understanding of it is that we all have this ability to tap into our psychic powers or intuitive skill. It's all the same. It's all the same kind of realm. And I feel that we were all born with this. And this has been, if you trace back like thousands of years ago, we were very in tune with that. We would actively communicate, and that I really do believe that as well. And I feel like over the years we've kind of lost that. We've become a little bit numbed out. Now, for whatever reason, I'm not looking to sort of have any conspiracy theories here. I'm just looking at, for whatever reason that is, as a group consciousness, we've forgotten that. But everybody has access to it. Now, there is a kind of, the way I see it is, I do tend to teach this a bit. There's a little bit of an etiquette around it. Excuse me, because when you're learning this, but it's something that's in you already. So it's not something new. And quite often people will sense like it's something that was in them and they've forgotten. Does that make sense? It's like a reminder of that there's something inside of us. It might feel new to start with, but it will feel very natural because it's part of who we are. And that's been closed down over the centuries, especially over like the witch hunts and all of that stuff, because it was seen to be a threat of being able to access and source these powers. Because if we stand in our power, then there's no need for certain things to be sold to us. And there's no need for us to, be kind of certain ways things are set up in society now. It could really change things tremendously. So there's reasons as to why that's been numbed down, which isn't often spoken about. But now we're living in this wonderful time and age where we can speak about it. So I actively encourage you to really listen to what's going on within you, because all too often we're so busy talking, just constant talking, and whether we're aware of it or not, we don't listen. So we can ask and we can pray and we can say, please help me with this. But are we listening? Are we actively listening? Are we taking that time to listen? And you might think, well, how do I listen? So one of the things you can, and I like to simplify things and make it very easy. And over time, that muscle will build. Remember, it's a muscle. So don't expect loads of instantly knowing everything. Work on it. Because the more you do it, the more you will start to see and have that relationship with yourself. You get to know these aspects of yourself that you maybe didn't realize was there within you, but they're within everybody. So what I recommend is getting a pen and paper and taking some time, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes, just to sit each day and just write down anything that's kind of coming to mind. It could be anything. It could be utter rubbish. It doesn't matter, but just write it down. But spend that time getting to know you and getting to listen. Now, that sometimes scares people because ooh, what is it, like voices? Am I going to get locked away? Am I going to get put in a psychiatric ward because I'm hearing voices? And it's like, don't be scared. Embrace that. Embrace this side of you that you have access to this other beautiful energy that you can't see. Now, some people can be visual with it.
Are you visual or are you?
Yeah, I can be. I mean, it varies. There's all different, but we all can be. This is the thing. We can tap into anything. If we wanted to, we can train ourselves to see that. Some people prefer to hear. Some people, it's a preference. Again, it's about getting to know yourself. But I believe that everybody can absolutely access it. But it will take that time and patience with yourself, like with anything. But because we live in an instant gratification world, we want it now. So if we're not getting results now, then it's like, this doesn't work. And it's rubbish, because it takes time. Anything that's worth it is built on, and it takes that time and effort and wanting to get to know yourself. But because this is our life, and there's only, we're here with ourselves for the rest of our lives. So I feel it's worth looking at that and getting to know this inner voice. Now, I feel lucky that I was taught this at a young age, but anybody can pick this up. Anybody. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to take 30 years to do it at all. It's about consistent action. So listening and writing down any ideas that just come to you seemingly out of nowhere, or you think a song's going to come on the radio or in your car or whatever, and then it comes on. It's the synchronicity, again, of looking at it and being open to it, which is the first step. But then writing it down and listening, which is really important as well. And then also it's about looking at your daily practice. Like, what do you do that supports you? It's important you're supporting yourself as well. So like, one of the things I actively encourage is a journal. And then the gratitude is important as well, to keep our energies a little bit more consistently balanced. The way I see it is balanced, because if we're expecting to be happy and positive all the time, we're setting ourselves up for failure, because the world we live in right now isn't at that place unless, okay, I'm saying that some people do, but I think it's about not putting that pressure on ourselves. And I think because of the way social media is, we can see expectations of where we think people are living this happy, like amazing life all the time. And I don't really believe that's necessarily true. I think the majority of people are just managing the best with what they've got. And that's something I would aim for, is managing with what you've got and being the best of who you are, not limiting yourself, but not putting expectations where it's not necessarily believable to you at the time either. Because as you keep making these small steps, you'll start to believe and you'll start to get to know yourself and what works for you. And what works for you doesn't necessarily work for your best friend. So this is also an important time to take that, use it as sacred time to get to know yourself and the realms. Now, I was saying about the etiquette when it comes to, like you said about, can I read people on the streets and stuff? As with anything, there's certain things, like, and as I say, an etiquette where it's not, I don't feel it's nice to just go and jump into somebody's energy without their permission. In fact, I think it's quite a wrong thing to do, in a sense that you're invading somebody's space, and it's not necessarily right. It's like being at a supermarket. You won't just delve into somebody and ask them what the hell's going on with their life with somebody that you don't know. So it's no different to if I wouldn't actively ask that person, then you don't go there. Now, some people do, but it can be an invasion, and I don't believe in that at all. So I always think about ask permission as well. I'm very big on this, like ask permission from whoever you're going to read for, or don't just put something on somebody either as well, because sometimes we can be so caught up in our own stories, we can project that onto people. And if we're not mindful and understanding our own energy and what's from us and what's from somebody else, we can get caught up. And it could be something in ourselves, something we need to hear, but we feel so passionate, but we think it's for someone else. So we're telling that other person this is what it is. And it's not, it's something that we need to hear. So it's about being mindful of that as well. So make sure you're always looking and dealing with the stuff that's coming up for ourselves, but not getting lost in it, not dwelling in it, but just actively being aware and mindful. So it's about getting to a neutral place as well, is when you come in to learn these energies. It might sound complicated, but it's not. It's just a certain etiquette. So I don't recommend starting to pick up on someone's energy in a supermarket or, in a grocery store or whatever, because you wouldn't do that naturally. You wouldn't just start, unless you was going to actively ask somebody that, then don't go there. Like, I wouldn't want somebody just starting to read my energy. It's a bit invasive. So yes, can you read somebody's energy? Yes. Is it the right thing to do? Well, no, not unless you're going to go ask them.
But can I actually protect myself from that? Like in the supermarket, like set up a shield or something so no one can have permission to read me?
And this is the wonderful thing, because there's different scenarios here, and it depends on the different truths. Because one scenario could be yes, where I'd say yes, you put yourself in a golden light where the angels are protecting you. And energy is very real, by the way. So we pick up on this, whether we see it or not. And I can explain this. If you've walked into a room where somebody's had an argument, but you haven't been in that room where they had an argument, but you can sense it. There's like a feeling in that room or if somebody's maybe you've gone into a hospital room and someone's just died like about 2 hours before, and you're in that waiting room or whatever. You can pick up energy. Anybody can feel, you can sense it on some level, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a scene, whatever. All of us have that. We know it. There's like a knowing or a feeling, whatever that is to us. So energy is very real. Yes. I feel it's our responsibility to mind our own energies, because when we do that, things become much easier. But in the reality of things, we don't. The majority of people don't. So you've got all kinds of energy flying around, and especially at supermarkets. So yes, this is just one scenario. Right? So you can put yourself in like a ball of light. And if that feels for you, that protects you, then that's amazing. Like, do that, right? Or it might be for somebody else that they see mirrors around them. So then it's reflected or deflecting off or whatever. So yes, it's about being mindful of that. Or it's like a shield for some people where they see like a coat and maybe get Archangel Michael in to bring in that extra energy. But here's the other bit. The deeper you go with this work, the more levels and layers there are. Because, so from I quote A Course in Miracles a few times, because it's really making me question a lot of things. And one of the examples they share there is that there's also another thought, just to another scenario. There's possibly loads of scenarios, but one to think about is there really anything that we're trying to protect ourselves from?
Right.
Okay, so this is a whole other level. What is it inside of us that we're scared of, that we feel we need protection from? Now I'd say that's at a much deeper level. It's not something you go in with that. Otherwise we can get naive to it sometimes and think that everybody's love and light. And if we're not really believing that, we set ourselves up for being wide open to potential, if we're not really believing it. And if we're going around saying, yes, everything's love and light, but we're not believing it, and we're not doing anything energetically to support, it's all about support for ourselves, then what that can do is open us up to people saying or doing things which are, not particularly pleasant, because on some level we may be expecting that. Does that make sense? And it can throw people off. And that's when they're saying it doesn't work. The energy doesn't work. So there's a whole different layer in it.
It's so interesting how you can't lie to yourself in a way, to your deeper self.
No.
And
that's part of it. So it's looking at that with the protection thing is what you're protecting yourself from. That must mean that part of you feels you're at risk from something going to hurt you in this world. If that's what that is, that's something inside of you that you feel afraid of. A Course in Miracles picks up on this beautifully, because it says that on some level, if we're scared of being attacked, then we are also being an attacker. Now that to me, when I read that, was like, oh my gosh. Wow. Like, I remember reading it going, that's intense, because we don't want to think that about ourselves. We don't want to necessarily see any sort of darkness in ourselves. We don't want to see that. Like when we're on this journey, we'd rather, it's so much easier to not see that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we've got to look at that.
I've definitely come to that there's darkness in me. And I think that every human being has darkness, because there is duality. We have both sides in us. And I think if you're not admitting that, then it's kind of difficult, because you will put a lot of stuff under the carpet. I mean, It's there. It's not. That's part of being human, I think.
Yeah, and it always comes up.
Yes.
So you can push it down, but only for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But it's always there, and so this is why it is that really it's looking at where we are in our lives right now and what will support us. So if on some level we feel at threat or at risk of something, that something might hurt us, absolutely do those techniques. Really do them, because it's important to do them. I do them. I don't feel like, I know I've got my own stuff to work through, and I teach this. I've been teaching this for years, but I'm very transparent. I will share that. And I think it's important. I'm seeing more and more that it's important I share that. And I used to feel scared of sharing it in case people looked down on me because I wasn't being this person like the other teachers or whatever that seems to have all their crap together. And
I love your honesty about that. A lot of the people I interview are saying the same thing, and I think it's shifting exactly that we don't need to put the spiritual teachers on a pedestal anymore. No. It's like you say, it's rubbish. I mean, you're human beings, and we all are. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a life, I think, if we didn't have anything to work on.
We'll be enlightened. We'd be maybe in Buddhahood or something, aren't we? Yeah. Like the more we're alive, we're here to learn.
Yeah.
And play as well. It's really important to play and have fun and not get so caught up in, the mundane stuff or what's going on in the group consciousness. We can actively put amazing energy into the group consciousness as well, because we're all tapped into it. And I think sometimes we're so busy in trying to get away from that and trying not to allow the group consciousness energies to affect us. But what we can do is we can also put in and actively imagine like beautiful love and angelic energy going into the group consciousness, which is something I've been doing, like really working on recently, because I didn't think of it like that.
So tell us a little bit about your upcoming events. I know you're coming to Norway.
Yes, for the first time. I'm so excited about that.
Oh, first time. Awesome.
Yes. So we've got, well, I'm going to Croatia in July, and there's an island there called Obanjan. And I've not been before, but it looks like absolutely incredible. So I'm going to be doing some workshops there as part of the program. So that's not my own thing. That's in partnership with them, which is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm just so excited to go there. And then there's, what have we got coming up? Then there's Norway, which is in October. So it's October the 11th and 12th. And I think we're just confirming the venue and the location. I think we're going to be doing that in Oslo. We was going to do it in, I can never pronounce it.
The Molde. Yeah, because that's pretty far from Oslo, and I was like, oh, that's very far.
Yeah, it's quite far.
I live in Oslo, yeah.
So we're just in talks now, and we feel like Oslo is going to be the best place. We just need to confirm, because we had a venue already, but now, literally, we're just this morning, actually, we were just looking at some venues in Oslo. So that feels like that'd be the best place for us to do it.
And what will we learn if we go to this workshop?
So it's going to be a 2-day workshop, and my husband is just amazing as well. He teaches all about the public speaking side of things. So he does more of the outer communication and how to authentically get your message across in a really fun way. So he's worked with a lot of corporate companies like Cisco, and he works with CEOs, and he doesn't normally work with the smaller businesses. So it's a real honor to have him come down. And I felt like it really beautifully enhances what I'm doing. So I'm talking all about the inner communication and getting to know your intuition. I'll be bringing my card deck with me as well. So everybody will get a card deck there, and they'll get to understand their own intuition. So we'll be delving into that and really active, because I think when you're there in person, you can actively put these techniques into place. So it'll be a really energized workshop where, you know, sometimes stuff might come up, it might not, I don't know, but it'll be fun. But there'll be a lot of learning there as well. So it's a place of really inviting you to go deep. But we'll also be doing some energetic meditations there as well, where we can, because I do that a lot, where we do visualizations, meditations to clear some of the blockages, because quite often we can hold on to stuff. So there'll be a real mixture, and I work very organically as well. So we're going to be doing that on the first day. So you'll be working with me the first day, which is all about the inner communication, the intuition, learning more about who we are and how to connect to that. And we'll be doing that actively during the day. Then on the second day, there's my husband, Steve, which is all part of, so the tickets you get all of it. And he's going to be doing all about the outer communication, how you present your message to the world and how you do it in a fun, authentic way and make it unique to you. So it's basically all the communication, the inner and outer communication. And we are, as I said, we're just confirming the venues now. There's a few venues we're looking at in Oslo, but I feel like that's going to be the best place for us to do it.
I'm so happy that more and more people are coming to Oslo, and I'm starting arranging some stuff too, because I want things to happen here.
It's beautiful.
I want to bring you guys here.
It's a beautiful place, and like I mean, everything's ready from our end, and it's all booked in. So it's the 11th and 12th of October, and as I say, there's different venues we're looking at, and so all of the will be on my website. It'll be on. So mine's really easy. It's Jolene, is in Dolly Parton's song. I think most people have heard of that, but it's jolene.com. And they'll all be on there, all of the information on there as well. And then I've got an event in Devon down south here, which is a full day workshop. So basically, I was going to this is the first time that I've actually done this workshop in this way. So it's a world first, actually doing it in Norway.
Awesome.
I've got my one in England is after Norway. That's in November. So you guys over there are going to get this first, and with Steve there as well, to do this together. We've been asked to do this before. Nice. But we felt like it's the right place to do it. So we're going to do this in Norway first. So We're really excited about doing it.
I really hope that I get to meet you. We'll see. I'm here. Awesome. I live in Oslo. And that would be nice to connect again. I feel like we have so much to talk about. But thank you so much, Jolene. And all the best with your wonderful work.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I hope it's been useful for everybody watching.
Very useful, at least for me. And thank you so much for watching, guys. And remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from Norway. Bye-bye.